Welcome to Accounting High. You know, at the beginning, people say, absolutely not. I don't even support legalization. I want nothing to do with this industry. And then maybe 3 years, 5 years in, those same accountants come back to me saying, hey, I was totally against the industry, but my spouse was diagnosed with cancer. And this is the only thing that's providing them with relief. I've seen the shift in people's perception of the industry and the social stigma. And even with the news as of the day of this recording, the plant being rescheduled to Schedule 3 is going to make a huge change in how people feel going forward.
Welcome back to our class. It's the guide. Please take a seat. Step into this unique guidance session. Navigate with me. It's the capital S. Oh yes, I'm fresh. C-O-O-T. Y apostrophe O-K-R apostrophe C. Yeah, janitor Scott coming to you live from the closet with a bucket and a mop. So find a cozy spot. We all want financial freedom. ACCOUNTINGHIGH. Preach. Putting this course together. Sit back, relax, open your mind. Classes in session. Guidance class at Accounting High.
Introducing the star of our show,
Scotty and Naomi.
We're gonna have a problem here.
Class is in session.
Oh my gosh, I've never been so excited.
I have with me today Naomi Granger, the founder of NACAT, National Association of Cannabis Accounting and Tax Professionals. This is the co-founder of Dope CFO. Naomi, you've been a CPA and in the profession for many years now. First thing to share with our students, how you ended up in this space, not in the cannabis space, but in the accounting space and as a CPA in general.
Thank you so much. So yeah, my background is accounting. I did land in the Big Four accounting. I landed in corporate accounting out of college, got my CPA license. And then after 12 years, I realized that I no longer wanted to be in an office or a cubicle anymore. I thought that that meant I needed to learn a whole new skill set. So I learned web design and social media marketing and online content and all those things. This was way before COVID. My dream was working remotely from my computer, laptop lifestyle. And so I stumbled upon a course that taught me how to build a remote accounting practice. And because after 12 years of working inside of an office, I didn't know it was even possible. So I started learning and working with clients in my remote accounting practice.
How did you find this course, or who created it?
I don't want to shout them out. It's no longer available, but it was a big course. So I am the historical co-founder of Dope CFO. We were both in that. I no longer am affiliated with that organization, but we were both in the original course. And one of the main tactics that they taught in the course was that you have to pick a niche and become an expert in one niche if you really want to build your firm and go to the next level. And so I bounced around to a bunch of different niches, and I just couldn't get excited about it because it just was bland. I mean, it was boring. It was everything reconciled perfectly, and there were no issues and everything tied up. And then when I learned about the cannabis industry and saw how complicated it was and how it was growing back then, this was 2017. So there was only 8 adult use states. And so how much it was growing and how underserved it was and how highly profitable it was, I didn't turn my head back. That was the direction that I knew that I needed to go. And I haven't looked back since.
Some might say that it could have been kind of risky to do. It was a Wild West back then. Some might say it still is the Wild West now when it comes to the accounting, which is why you've built what you've built. But tell me, what was it about it in 2017 that caught your attention?
Yeah, so in 2017, if everybody remembers, that's when Nevada first passed our regs. I live in the state of Nevada. So we passed our regs in 2016, and the first adult use dispensaries were open in 2017. And so it was just the buzz all around everywhere that I looked. And then I also saw in the news that California was going to pass their adult use regs January of 2018. And so it was kind of like the buzz everywhere that I looked. And then when I started learning more about the industry, I've always been the type, even when I was in public accounting firms, they try to niche you down into one industry. And I was the one that always volunteered and said, hey, I'll go help with the manufacturing. I'll go help with the tech industry. Like I just always wanted to constantly learn. And I realized every conversation I had about the cannabis industry, I learned something new still to this day, 8 years later, 7 years later.
Well, I also saw in your history you worked at Pfizer too. So you've been in medical, well, I mean, we're saying dispensaries. Those were some of the early versions. Adult recreation is what you were looking at too. But what are some of the similarities that you may have seen from Pfizer and then going into an industry like this?
So there are zero similarities. I worked at Pfizer headquarters in New York, and I was in their state and local tax department, so the SALT department. And they didn't have to, there was no concept of 280E when I was there.
You were filling out sales and use tax. Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing the state and local income tax.
Filling out tax forms. and
Yeah.
things.
You know, we didn't even know what they were selling. Like, it was just, we know they got some revenue in Wisconsin, so let's go
You're
ahead
so
and
far
sell it.
removed at that
Yeah.
from that point. So I don't think there's any similarities in the products that they're offering either when it comes to Pfizer and the cannabis companies as well. There's a pretty strong divide in belief systems, I guess, around that. And we've talked about that on prior episodes. No similarities to pharma, big pharma or prescription, but it caught your eye. It was the shiny new thing as accountants. This is a new compliance now. All new things that you got to learn or that you can start paying attention to. And you're working at some of these larger firms in the cannabis department. Is that right?
Yes.
What were you learning in some of the early stages, like 2017, 2018?
Oh, so I was learning how it's state legal and federally illegal. And so I was learning how important it is to really understand the state rules and regulations and really understand how these regulators are auditing. It's bananas. People just think, when they think about audit, they're just thinking, oh, it's going to be a federal income tax audit. No, you have a federal income tax audit. You also have state income tax audits. But at the cannabis industry, you have the cannabis compliance boards coming in and doing inspections on a monthly, quarterly basis, making sure that the inventory is matching up with their seed to sale track and trace system, and that the sink is far enough away from the processing unit, and all of the different little compliance things. I've had my clients shut down so many times for just the smallest little compliance thing. So I really learned what a state legal business is.
And these are state-run associations, or who runs a lot of these that are doing the audits?
So for the audits of the actual operator, that's from the whatever board that regulates it for that state. So they have the Cannabis Compliance Board in the state of Nevada. They have the Office of Cannabis Management, I think, in New York. Every single one has a different name. But then you also have like the Department of Revenue from the state that might come in to make sure that your sales taxes being properly recorded and reported so that you're paying the proper amount of sales tax. So it's all of and there's so many
So there's
layers.
more compliance.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of compliance associated with all of these layers. And so that's more opportunity for the preparers that may have just been doing, your standard run-of-the-mill day-to-day business. I mean, maybe e-commerce has some complexities to it, but there's nothing that's as complex as this on the market. So you're diving in head first to something you got new things coming up every day. This is like almost a precluder to COVID, when COVID was happening, right? You got all these new regulations. Each state's different. Everything coming out is like, it could be brand new because legislation changes all the time. Like I said earlier, this is the Wild West. So you're in the thick of it. At what point did you say, I want to do this out on my own? When did you co-found Dope CFO? What was the birth of that?
So that was at the very beginning. And then we were working with operators, and then a lot of accountants said, hey, I want to do this too. And so then we started training. I can't really talk about Dope CFO, and I can't get too deep into everything there.
As you got through that, I guess, what was the next step leaving there and then the next thing you did?
Yeah, so once I left there, I realized that there was still a need, an even bigger need for accountants to have access to all the players in the industry. And so that's the reason why I founded the National Association of Cannabis Accounting and Tax Professionals. And the purpose of that association is to bring in experts from all areas of the industry. And we have webinars and talks with these experts so that accountants can understand. We bring in the IRS and we talk to them and say, hey, how are you training your examiners to come audit our clients? We brought in insurance providers. We bring in attorneys, payroll service providers, you name it, just so that as accountants, because they're going to ask you the question, even though you may not be qualified to provide insurance, they're going to say, hey, something came up. Do you know where to go? And so that's the purpose of the association. It's just continuing professional education in this industry.
What was it about working with accountants versus working with clients?
I really enjoyed the training aspect. I really enjoyed the business development side and helping seeing people be able to enter the industry and land their first client and get really excited about their first billing. That really interests me. Working with the actual client, you're doing the day-to-day, and eventually I start to get bored. And I don't know if you could tell, but I start to get bored with different things. And that's part of the reason why I'm in the cannabis industry, because I like I like the change and the volatility. And so, yeah, I really enjoy being able to be in the forefront of this industry, shaping the education and knowledge that is coming out for our professional service providers in this industry.
So accounting is seen as a pretty dull profession, pretty dull, boring by most people. What kind of resistance did you meet early on when you're presenting cannabis?
People who like the social stigma when I mentioned.
I guess the social stigma, the fact that it's like federally illegal still.
Yeah, but when you say resistance, from who?
From accountants that may be hesitant to like join the association.
That's really interesting because I've been doing this for 7 years. And at the beginning, it was all just education that this was actually an industry, a viable industry that needs accountants. So we had to do the education and kind of like indoctrination so that accountants can understand what's going on. But I've had, at the beginning, people say, absolutely not. I don't even support legalization. I want nothing to do with this industry. And then maybe 3 years, 5 years in, those same accountants come back to me saying, hey, I was totally against the industry, but my spouse was diagnosed with cancer a couple years ago, and this is the only thing that's providing them with relief. I've seen the shift in just people's perception of the industry. I've seen the shift in the social stigma, and even with the news as of today, of the day of this recording, the plant being rescheduled to Schedule 3 is going to make a huge change in how people feel about this industry going forward.
And tell me what that means. What is the plant being scheduled to Schedule 3?
Yeah, so the reason why cannabis is such a difficult industry or so highly regulated is because it's Schedule 1 on the Controlled Substances Act, which was an act that was enacted back in the 1970s, Reagan era, to classify drugs from Schedule 1 to Schedule 5, with Schedule 1 being the most restrictive, meaning there's no known medical benefit for those items. They're highly addictive. And so cannabis was right there in Schedule 1. And so if you're caught with it, you have this highly addictive, no known benefit drugs. And that's where a lot of people got incarcerated. It falls within the scope of tax code 280E, which means you have to pay much higher taxes if you're operating in this business than any other regular business. It's federally illegal, comes with a lot of regulations. And so now what's happening is Biden came out, made a statement, it's on Twitter, saying this is ridiculous. It should not be scheduled in Scheduled 1. And the Health and Human Services needs to relook at this and propose new scheduling for this drug.
That's a pretty big swing right there.
Right.
From just saying like now we're knocking it down from a 1 to a 3.
Yeah, that's a
right?
big swing.
So it's still a Schedule 3.
It's still on the schedule, but us advocates want it off and wants it to be regulated like alcohol and tobacco. We feel like it's the same or even better, but...
Arguably. I live in a state where it's still illegal, North Carolina, and we recently got our first client that's dealing with the other side of this law. So there's the Delta 8 and the Delta 9. And so we see a lot of shops in the states where it's still illegal. A lot of places have popped up that are selling these strains that are legal or unregulated or whatever you want to call it. So now we have a client that's selling that, like syrups and other types of things, I guess vape. And to me, it looks, and people, it says it's just like cannabis, I guess. Just like THC, it's a Delta, it's a different strain. What can you speak to on that? Because that also seems like the Wild West. There's no regulations to this. I don't know what we need to follow besides like any other vape shop
Yeah,
in this
so that's a
case.
huge issue in the industry right now. It falls under category called intoxicating hemp. And what happens is, if anybody's familiar, back in 2018, there was a farm bill that was passed that said any cannabis with less than 0.03% THC is legal. So it doesn't fall, it's not Schedule 1, it's just completely legal. And that's they call it hemp CBD. And so what's happening is you can take a bunch of plants that has less than 0.03% THC and just concentrate those, pull out that 0.3%, and then create something totally new that it's more intoxicating than any marijuana plant, but there's no rules or regulations around that.
You can get them at farmers markets anywhere.
And you could really hurt yourself with it.
They sell it at restaurants around here now too. Delta 8 infused sparkling water now
Right.
in different restaurants I've seen.
So yeah, so there's no lab testing. Like, it's really dangerous. And then that also, it messes with the state regulators, because these people who are making a lot of money off the intoxicating hemp, they don't want regulations in their state. And so it's kind of makes it hard for those regulations to move forward into some of those states.
Wow. So that's fascinating. So we're in a perpetuating state of conflict with this, because there's people on one side making a lot of money because of the fact that there is no regulation now, and it will cost them a lot of money, and it'll probably cost them a lot of business if and when it's federally legal too. So not only is the state having some control here about keeping certain things from changing, but then also you've got the federal side of this that could change everything for everybody all at once. So what does that look like, that scenario, if they were to set in the federal level, say, this isn't a Schedule 3 anymore, take another swing at it, and then they remove it altogether?
Yeah. So, I mean, it'd just become just like alcohol and tobacco, or just like any other industry at that point. And I don't know if it's going to happen in our lifetime. It took 50 years to come from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. I mean, I'm pretty sure it won't take 50 years. But when I started in cannabis, we always said, oh, it's going to happen in 5 years. Oh, it's going to happen in 5 years. And now we're like, oh, 10 years, we're 10 years out. We're more than 10 years out. So, I mean, the government just doesn't move that fast. Yeah.
Right. So this actually today is actually big news. Like the fact that it took 50 years to get from a 1 to a 3
Yes.
is a big deal, because then it's just they're chipping at the wall here, or
Right.
there's cracks in the foundation.
I don't think they'll reschedule and then turn around very quickly and say, oh, now it's completely legal. They're going to, take their time
Right.
and say, hey, this is the right move.
But what are the ramifications of that? It being a 3. What other substances are a 3 right now?
Yeah, so I think it's Tylenol with codeine is also a 3. So it's still every single substance on the schedule are pharmaceuticals, and it requires a doctor's prescription to get them, except for cannabis. Cannabis is the only one that has an adult use application. And so that kind of also, makes it seem a little strange. Like, okay, so what's going to happen now? Are we going to
Like
start
a loophole.
Yeah, are we going to start needing a doctor's prescription? Is it going to turn into a pharmaceutical? We don't know what's going to happen.
Okay. So this is still the Wild West, as I said. And that's why you created this entire association. So tell me about building that out, because you've got certifications now. What are the things that you offer now in this? Is it also a community?
Yeah, so it's a community of over 200 accountants in the association. And the way that the association is organized is, not only do we bring in the expert speakers, actually right before this recording, I had a call with somebody in the psychedelic space who has a huge grow they're not growing psychedelics. They have 1 million square foot cultivation facility in Coachella, but they have a background in psychedelics. And so we have talks every single month, but then the organization is also organized into regional committees. And so our members are experts within those regions, and we do the research and we provide training and education to operators in particular states, that whatever region we're over, so that we can become authorities in the industry. It's an easy way to get clients if you're teaching your clients, how to do their budgets and in their accounting and being compliant, as well as building up your own knowledge and building up the knowledge of the whole by bringing back some of the best practices and some of the lessons learned and some of the changes when we have our group meetings.
Oh, wow. Okay. Because this is always changing, how many people do you currently have that's just paying attention to the laws and keeping up with the education? Like, whose job is that? Is that your job?
Oh, you mean as far as my employees?
I don't know. I'm just asking how you guys keep up with everything. Yeah.
So the way that we keep up with it, I also sit on the board for the National Cannabis Industry Association, which is one of the first industry associations. So I stay up to speed by networking there, as well as just following all the publications. So we have all the marijuana, MJ Business Daily, we have Marijuana Ventures and Ganjapreneur. There's so many publications. So I stay up to date with that, as well as
Entrepreneur?
yeah, that's one of the magazines. As well as for the states that I follow, I join the meetings when the regulators have actual public meetings for that state to make changes in the industry.
This is big news that just came out. What happens next with something like this? So does that mean you produce more content? Do you create a course just on what this means now, this Schedule 3? And everything? Like, what's next?
I'll start talking to a bunch of other accountants, a bunch of lawyers in the industry. And right now, I think a lot of people are just speculating as to what exactly this is going to look like, because nobody has ever seen a scheduled drug with an adult use application and what that means. So I'll just meet with people who are experts in the industry doing the research and also do my own research, and then start doing different webinars and doing different meetings to discuss some of the topics and some of the issues, and also sitting down with our clients and trying to help our clients understand what does that mean for their business. 280E is going away. So our clients are going to have more money. They're going to need to have more tax planning. They're going to be able to invest in different things for their business, grow their business.
What's the 280E?
So 280E is a federal tax code that says you cannot deduct any of your business expenses if you are trafficking a controlled substance within the meaning of Schedule 1 or Schedule 2. And so since cannabis was Schedule 2 for so long, they could not deduct their business expenses. So that meant you have sales, you have your cost of goods sold, and your gross profit. You pay your tax rate at your gross profit. And then after you've paid your taxes, now you can pay your payroll and your rent and your utilities and your advertising and all of your other business operating expenses. So you're negative already. Right. So with it, the definition applies to only Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. So with it being rescheduled to 3, it goes away completely.
Is there a retroactive component of this where you can amend prior year returns?
We would love for that to be the case. I don't think so. The article that I've read, there's nothing that no guidance has been rolled out yet that says, hey, this is how it's going to work. It's retroactive from the beginning of business or from the beginning of the year, or it starts sometime in the future, January 1, 2025. We don't know what the effective date is going to be, but hopefully they do get a little bit of relief. And we also don't know if the federal government is going to implement some type of excise tax to make up for the loss of revenue.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, and we've always said, like in the hypotheticals, is if they were to ever make it federally legal, then there's a huge tax component to that. That's why they would do it, right? I mean, to make up on all the lost years of tax revenue there's just a lot of potential there, I would say, for something like that. But let's go back to some of the other issues too, because that's the other one, cash, right? So it was for a long time, a lot of banks would not open up accounts for any of these businesses. Can you explain that to our students?
Yeah.
Why that was the case?
So because it's federally illegal, that means there's no interstate commerce. And because banks are national banks, like your Wells Fargo's, your Bank of America's, they're built on interstate commerce, meaning you can have a open your bank account in California and go use your debit card in New York or Europe or anywhere in the world, that's interstate commerce. But cannabis is landlocked. So you have to grow and sell your product within the state rules. And it doesn't matter if California is legal and Nevada is legal, you can't cross over borders. And so the banks would have to completely overhaul their system and create a closed loop system so that that cash kind of stays within the state. And no bank wanted to go through that process, especially the major banks. And so what happened was the first banks that started banking cannabis were credit unions, local credit unions, because they were already just a local credit union and they weren't interstate commerce. And so that's where we started. And then other companies realized that there was a need here. And so now a lot of companies come in on the back end and they provide that back infrastructure to help banks bank cannabis. So every client I've had for the last 7 years has been banked, so they are able to be banked. However, the banking is often very limited. Either, it's a small credit union, so a lot of things that we take for granted as far as your deposit being right, as far as being able to do wire transfers, bill pay and stuff, you may or may not have access to that. You may or may not have a debit card. You may not be able to even walk into the bank and make a deposit or make a withdrawal. You have to call Armored Car to make the deposit to the Federal Reserve, which will transfer it to the bank. Like, it just is so overly complicated. And on top of that, it came at a $2,000, $3,000 monthly fee. So that's kind of been where we're sitting with cannabis.
Like a cash counting fee, like management fee from the bank?
Yeah. A business banking fee. And they say it's because of the compliance that they need extra personnel for the cash counting, as well as we have to file what's called validations on a monthly or quarterly basis, where we verify the cash that actually came in, send them in records to show so that they can be comfortable that nothing else is flowing through that cash that's being deposited.
I've dealt with a lot of small businesses and people opening up businesses and businesses failing and, putting a lot of money into opening up like a car wash and how intense that investment can be. So I can only imagine what types of business owners have the means and the wherewithal to be able to manage all of this and know that they're probably not even going to make that much money in it. Because at the end of the day, you're getting killed on taxes on one end. It's so difficult to manage with the cash and everything. I mean, I could only imagine that this is like wealthy people that are getting into this or larger businesses that see a future big business opportunity. So they're taking a loss in the beginning. What types of clients were you seeing that you were servicing in this industry?
So yeah, that's one thing. And that's one of the things that I always mentioned, that you have to be heavily capitalized in order to survive and be able to ride the wave of heavy regulation. I've seen so many businesses shut down as well. Most of the people who are in this industry are really passionate about the plant. And you just have to have that drive and that passion in order to survive. And then you have to be able to get the money. If you have friends and family, if you are able to get some type of loan from some venture capitalist, however you can get it, you just have to be heavily capitalized.
Heavily capitalized, because and this is something that there's no end in sight to it. And every location is slightly different. There's different regulations. You said something from seed to sale. What does that mean?
Yeah, so the cannabis industry is the only industry in the country that requires that you have a state mandated seed to sale track and trace system. That is kind of like if you think about an inventory system. However, the state owns the system and you have to log in and record your inventory so that the state can keep tabs on it. And part of the purpose of that is because we are dealing with medicine. And so the state wants to be able to track that medicine from seed to the final end user, just in case there needs to be some type of recall. But obviously the other part of that is now they can track your revenue and your sales and make sure that you're paying in the proper amount of taxes on this plant.
Wow. So they have full view of everything that's happening within there. And if you're not, so that's every seed. How many seeds are some of these businesses dealing with?
Yeah. So what happens is you plant
Do you have
seeds.
any idea?
I don't know how many seeds, but you plant your seeds, and then when they get seedlings, there's like these tags, and then the tags just follow them until they become like the mother and or the clone. Even clones, the tags follow that clone and you replant those. So they have the system is set up and tracks it all the way through.
Okay. Compared to states like Texas and North Carolina and some of these other southern states that are now, how many states? Let's talk about that too. You said in the beginning it was only 7, right? How many now?
We sit at about 24 to 26 adult use and 36 to 38, including those adult use. There's an additional states that are also medical only. Outside of those 36 to 38 that have the either medical only or medical and adult use, just about the entire country has decriminalized marijuana. I think there's maybe 2 states that have not decriminalized. So you can still have like maybe have small amounts on you, possibly do your own little private home grow as long as it's small. They're kind of like turning a blind eye as long as you're not, a kingpin.
So what does that do to the industry too? Does that have any impact on the states that are legal? Whereas is there still a black market, let's just say?
Absolutely. The black market is strong. And even states that are legal, their laws kind of restrict businesses from being successful. It promotes the black market still because they're so highly regulated and highly taxed.
After the taxes, after all the costs, and the fact that you can't even write off any expenses, you're left with almost nothing when if you're on the black market, it's pure profit. It's a
Right.
seed that you're basically making money off of. You've got all of your other growth costs and other expenses.
Yeah, you can price out your competition. The only benefit to the legal market is for the consumer who wants to know exactly what they're consuming and how it was grown and that it's been lab tested.
Everybody suffers in
Right.
this market. There's still a lot of benefits and there's a lot of hope for the future. So what are your hopes that this turns into? Because right now you've got a market that's so dissimilar. How do you keep up with anything these days, right? What's your hope that this turns into?
I mean, I love being an advocate of the industry. I feel like this is one of the once in a lifetime opportunities where you can shape social equity in this country. You can shape rules and regulations of one of the largest industries in the country. It's $30 to $40 billion last time I checked. And that's the legal market. The illicit market is estimated to be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. To be able to be in the forefront as the states and the federal government is actually writing rules and regulations and being able to advocate for our clients and make sure that we're shaping it so that it benefits our clients. That's what I enjoy about this. But my biggest hope is the social equity side of it, getting people who are incarcerated from the plant out of prison, being able to help them build viable businesses and have a wonderful rest of their life, despite what they had to go through in order to get there. But yeah, the social equity piece is what I'm passionate about.
Let's talk about that too. So some of the steps that are being taken. So in New York, I've heard that anybody that had been incarcerated or had a felony from any kind of marijuana case was getting priority to open up or to get their license in New York. I had heard about that. Can you speak on that or any other things that are happening similar to that?
Yeah, so a lot of states rolled out what they call social equity programs. Every single state's social equity program was different, but the general idea was if you were impacted by the war on drugs, negatively impacted, meaning you yourself or a very close family member was incarcerated or, any other type of legal ramifications around it, or if you lived in an area which was highly, an underpoverished area, which was highly policed, which they've admitted, highly policed, meaning if you got somebody looking at you, you're definitely going to get caught for something. The impact zone is what they call them. So if you live in an impact zone, then you get to qualify. So it depends on how they rolled it out. Some states say you get extra points on your license applications. Some states allocated a certain number of licenses only to these applicants, and then it went through a lottery system. Some states just gave you a license if you qualified and cash, maybe $250,000 to get the store open, but they all had their own rules around who qualified. But then that's where they kind of ended. You got a license, you got maybe some money, and then that was it. But if somebody has been incarcerated for the last 10 years, how are they going to be heavily capitalized to be able to put up a business. Like they might get started, but they don't have the resources and the connections and the friends and family who's going to give them the cash to operate this
But
business.
also the education, like to learning. It's hard
Yeah.
enough to manage a business without this cash. Now that you have the cash, now what do you do with it? Like they're giving people $250,000 to say, here, now open up your business. Now what? Like, what's the next step there?
And so what's happening is a lot of them are failing. Like there was a recent article that came out because you said education legal in the state of Arizona. I think they issued like 60 licenses and only 60 social equity licenses, and only 2 remain, and the others are owned by a regular corporation because they were able to beat them out of that license legally.
And they probably didn't even have to pay for it.
Yeah. And they didn't qualify, but somehow they got their hands on it.
Wow. So it's still going to be going on. It's attempts to make some change or make things right, but then no follow through. I think that's the age-old story of anything when it comes to institutional change. So we're still at the forefront of all of this, and there still is a lot of hope, and we're still looking toward the future. You're in the middle of the storm sometimes, and maybe there is no end in sight, or maybe the things like this happen today and it could be all worth it. How does that feel? Like, does this feel like a win, or does this feel like a slap in the face, this change? Were you hoping that they would just do it all away with it altogether?
I mean, it feels like a win. It's at least our clients are going to have access to, not only do they no longer have 280E, but banks feel a little bit more comfortable with banking. They may be able to get access to traditional loans to operate their business. It's a step forward.
So tell me about the certifications for accountants, the seed counters, or what was I saw something on one of your programs.
Certified Cannabis Seed Counter. So I have a training program called Calculating Cannabis, which is an 8-week deep dive for any accountant who's interested in getting started in this industry and working with operators. And so it takes you step by step through how to find these operators, how to close them, how to talk to them, how to understand their pain points and design tools and services that they're going to need, and then how to onboard these clients and work with them and really understand how to dive into the state rules and seed to sale track and trace systems and state rules and regulations so that you can feel confident with working with clients in this industry.
Yeah. So how many accountants are you working with now in the association?
So we have over 200 members who are in the association now working in these regional committees.
How many would you say have developed a niche like fully, and they've gone out and that's what they're branded as now, as a niche in cannabis?
Out of my members, it's probably 40 to 50% that are not very active. So, people join things, but may not have the time, or
so what I was getting at is roughly out there in the market, how many firms are labeling themselves and saying, this is what we focus on, like we're niching in cannabis? Because I think that's also has been some people's hesitation into picking a niche, is they think too many people are already doing it, or they see a few people doing it and they're doing it already, so they don't. I want to encourage people that there's probably not that many out there. Like how many would you say roughly?
I don't think there's that many. I mean, none of the big four firms, obviously, but some of the mid-tier firms, there's only a handful that are actually servicing them. And then most of the other firms are one-man, two-man firms who can only handle a handful of clients. These are huge clients. It's a $30 billion industry. And I think I did a Google search and there was like 30,000 accounting firms in the country. And so there's enough enough business out there for the accountants who do want to enter this industry to find a nice book of business.
Yeah, there's huge potential and there's a lot of opportunity. That was sort of what to highlight here is there's a need for accountants in this industry right now because of the heavy compliance and all the regulations and all the changes and the constant updates that you can charge fees that are probably higher than you would charge a regular compliance client, because there's more things you can do. There's more ways to help them. Right. So it's a path to be more profitable at your firm. If you're looking to pick a niche and you're in a state that this is legal, what about the people that are in states that it's illegal? Like I've always wanted this to be my niche, but because my state's illegal, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't go into that? What do you suggest for somebody like me?
It's coming. So I've been there. I mean, I've been in the industry for 7 years, and I spoke to people who were in states back then, because there were only 8, that it was illegal. And then I said, well, it's coming, don't worry. And a lot of some people took me up on it, and you can work remotely. So if you're in a state where it's illegal, pick one of the closer states that you can operate in and work with those operators. And then when it does come to your state, you're already experienced. You're already going to be the go-to expert. I'm oftentimes requested to come to the state society of CPA meetings for states as they are starting to introduce these laws, to talk to the CPAs and help give them an overview and a training on what's to come and how to operate, how to, handle these clients. And most times than not, when I ask the question after doing my presentation and telling them how complicated it is and all these banking issues and these track and trace issues, I ask them, like, who in here is actually interested in doing anything in this industry? And about 97% say no. There's very few who actually do want to take it on. And so there's just so much opportunity.
So some aren't even up for the challenge because it is a lot of work.
Right.
It would be a lot of effort, and these clients are going to be a lot different than your regular clients too. So your liability is a lot higher too, that they could go out of business if you overlook one of these regulations and you miss something that they needed to do, then they get shut down. So there's a big potential liability too. But for those that are up for the challenge, this could be very profitable niche to be in, as you found, and as you have created this entire association around it. So I appreciate you coming on. Can you tell us where our students can find you, where they can find the association, what they want to hear more or learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find us on socials at the acronym NACAT Pros. So NACAT PROS on all socials. You can email me personally, Naomi, Naomi, at NACAT Pros. If you go to our website, nacatpros.org, O-R-G, there's going to be a link at the very top that will take you directly to our free Facebook group as well to get additional training and education in the industry.
The 420 Face Group. We missed 420 by 10 days. We could have recorded on 420.
I was not here. I was at the Capitol lobbying for the industry on 420.
Oh, dope. Yeah, I was just up in D.C. too. I was not lobbying, but I went to the Capitol building and I visited the inside of the Capitol building. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Our nation's capital is beautiful. I just haven't spent a lot of time just out in D.C., so this was a really cool visit. Appreciate you, Naomi. Thanks for coming on. Don't be a stranger at Accounting High.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Peace out, homies. Class dismissed.